I'm a master at collecting projects. No matter how hard I try to buy something that's not a project, apparently it becomes a project. But this one is not going to be one of those drawn out, you guys will never get an update forever. We're going to get this done. I mean, I have to get this done. It's got to go to the European Auto Show on June 5th, and I also don't want it tying up my rack. It's kind of put a jam in all the rest of my other projects here that I had planned on doing at a certain time. So I'm going to get right to it. Now, this car I bought turnkey, essentially. It had a whole bunch of work done, engine out service, and I discovered some things that I kind of wish I hadn't. But we're going to right all of the wrongs, all of them. I'm going to pull the engine and transmission out. We're going to take a look at everything that was done and check everything, replace the intake gaskets because those weren't installed correctly. We're going to install a new IMS. I know the old one was apparently in okay shape. It's an early car, and those aren't really as problematic. It doesn't matter. It's coming out anyway. Be foolish not to put a new IMS. Doesn't matter how long it takes to get a new one. So I got one coming. Bought a whole bunch of parts for it. We'll probably need to order a bunch more after I get this engine out. And then we're going to clean everything. Like everything. I could never be a flat rate tech, ever. I'm slow because everything has to be clean. I'm way too OCD about that. Unfortunately, my garage is not something I'm OCD about. It's trashed. So I know. It's a mess because I never have time to clean it. But we're going to bang this project out. We're going to get this out of the garage today, I hope. We're going to get the drivetrain out of it beforehand, and then we're going to power wash everything. We're going to clean everything, and then I have to get my M3 on the rack so I can do rod bearings while I wait for parts for this. What have I done to myself? So contrary to popular opinion, there are actually two ways to get the engine and transmission out of one of these cars. Now keep in mind, I've never worked on one of these to this degree ever. This is actually the first 911 I've ever worked on. So the two ways to get the drivetrain out of this car are either to drop the whole unit complete out of the bottom or to lift the car off of the engine and transmission. And I know you guys think that's the same thing, but it isn't. It's not a joke. And I don't have a giant 1,000-pound capacity or even larger capacity hydraulic table to drop the drivetrain out of the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the whole car onto one of the heavy-duty tables I brought home from work, and then we're going to lift the car off of the drivetrain. And don't worry, I've got pull jacks to make sure this car doesn't fall off a rack. We'll get this done right. I sure hope so anyway. We're going to start at the top so that once this car goes up, hopefully I don't have to go up and down a bunch of times on the rack. We're going to get the air box out. We're going to start disconnecting all of the things that we have access to. Now, one thing I would like to try, and I know some of you are probably saying that's not going to work, is I'd like to not breach the AC system. It looks really easy to disconnect the lines, but I'm going to try to pull the compressor and let it dangle when I pull the engine and transmission out. But after looking at it for more than 0.7 seconds, that might not work. We're still going to try it. Now on this particular car, since I haven't worked on one, I'm going to put all of the bolts back to where they came from that I can. Obviously there's going to be some that I can't do that with, but we're going to reinstall as much of the hardware as we can so that I'm sure there's different lengths of bolts, and I want to make sure everything goes back to where it's supposed to go. Okay, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be able to get the compressor out. That's a definite maybe. Removing the brake booster hose that I have to replace because it has a hole rubbed in it from being installed kind of at an angle. I'm going to reinstall this bracket right here and the screws and hardware so that way everything goes back to where it came from, provided they were in the right place originally. Let's peel this belt off. Still can't see where that third bolt is. All right, it looks like it's underneath this plenum, so I don't know if this plan's going to work or not. I've got the throttle body off and the power steering reservoir out of the way. I really wanted to have a way to recover the Freon that's in this engine, the refrigerant. I didn't really want to let it go into the atmosphere. I've got a recovery machine at work, but I didn't want to drag it home for this either. But good or bad here, there's no Freon in it anyway. I cracked this line loose and yeah. So this was it was never refilled, or it has a massive leak. One of the two. God, I hope the rest of the AC components are okay on this car. I just have one more AC line. I think I have the fuel lines left. And maybe one coolant hose. And this is ready to go up in the air, and we'll get all the bottom stuff done. And I just dropped that. We'll get it back later. Tuck the harness up onto here. Hopefully that stays there. And power steering lines, fuel lines, coolant lines. We're getting there. Well, I think I've got all the top stuff done. I sure hope I didn't miss anything. Throttle cables undone, power steering hoses, AC lines, the fuel feed and return are done, the engine harness is done, multiple coolant lines are done, and I found some stuff I don't like. I'll get into that in a minute. So now we got to get it in the air. We'll get the shifter cables off. We'll see if I can drop it with or without the exhaust. And then it's just cross members and motor mounts, and this will be on the ground soon. I mean, not the ground. I'm not going to put it on the floor. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is pull the mufflers off. I can probably drop the engine with the mufflers on, but I need to align everything anyway, and it'll make it a lot easier and safer, and I don't really want to pull the rear bumper. So we're going to pull the mufflers off, see what else I've got to do. The next thing we're going to do is get the sway bar out of the way. Next, we're going to remove this cross brace. All right, now we've got axles. The moment is here. We're going to lower the car onto this table that I brought from work. I've got a piece of my house here, keeping everything from crushing the exhaust manifolds. And I just have a few bolts left. So let's get this thing on the table. I think this will work. Hopefully this table's not too wide. We'll find out real quick. All right, now I just have a few bolts to get out. And when I go to pull the car up, the engine and transmission should stay on this table. Should stay on this table. All right, so as far as I'm concerned, it's all disconnected. Whether it's all disconnected or not, we're gonna find out right now. Okay, we're gonna go back down and remove those through bolts. Those can't stay there, they're gonna get in a bind. think we're good. Probably should have put a piece of something underneath the trans because it's kind of tilted. I'll definitely do that before it goes back in. It'll make installation a little easier. I got everything. All right, now we're going to put a pull jack underneath this. Just because we just pulled a majority of this car's weight, well, a lump of this car's weight out, and I don't want to find out if I racked it bad.
Okay.
Well, for some reason, this cart seems a lot better than something that was, I don't know, plastic. Well, the motor and trans came out pretty easy. I didn't really find a whole lot else wrong. There's just a few nitpicky things, but most importantly, let's get a light on that. Most important is that intake gasket. It looks like it's just broken and hanging out of the flange it's supposed to be in. I don't understand how that's possible on new gaskets. So maybe they were reused. I'm not quite sure. Got some new parts coming for it. And there's a few things that are not clipped in under here, but it's not bad. It's all really simple fixes, just pushing that stuff back where it needs to go. And then there's vacuum line has like a plug in it, and I'm not sure if that's factory. Trans is very dirty. It looks clean probably in video, but we're gonna get this off and get this power washed so it looks nice. And there's the new air oil separator. That is new, and look, spring clamps. That makes me happy. It's got a new starter in it. Everything else looks pretty okay to me. What doesn't look okay is this. This is likely from the previous issue where the air oil separator had failed. And that's coolant mixing with oil. Now there wasn't a bunch of it, and I can tell it wasn't currently mixing because it's all spots of it and it's not like a consistent, but it is going to need to be addressed. We're going to have to clean all of this out because this is all stuff that we don't want inside the cooling system. All right, now we're going to buzz the bell housing bolts off so we can separate the motor and trans. Okay, hoping that this stays pretty level here, but I don't really know what's going to happen. The idea here is that we don't drop engine or trans. That was pretty anticlimactic. Oh, it's leaking coolant. It's okay. Well, it is definitely a brand new clutch, so that's good. I'm really curious to see if that has been resurfaced. Well, as you can see, the motor is out, transmission is off, and for the moment, this is just going to stay like this. We've got a bunch of parts on order, including a new IMS bearing, and we're going to go through and do some other things with the engine out, but those parts are still on their way. So for now, I'm going to kick the car out of the garage. I'm actually going to roll the car to my lower driveway where my power washer, my hose reel, and all that stuff is. And we're going to flush the entire system. We're going to try to get all of the intermix and all of the old green coolant, the wrong stuff, out of the system. So that way when I put the right stuff in, I don't have to keep changing it every so often, and I get all that stuff out now. Now, the engine I still have to flush as well. There's still a lot of junk in there. We'll do that some other way. But for now, we're going to get the car out of the garage and down to my lower driveway. Now, I'm not quite sure if this is going to work, but there is one way to find out, and that is by trying. It's like anything else. Oh, let me make sure it's a new... Wait, that doesn't matter. Parking brakes off. I think we're good to go. Now I've got the car on my lower driveway. There's a few tasks I'd like to do with the car here while we're waiting on parts. One of those is to clean everything that came off the car and clean the engine compartment of this car. I don't really like putting things back together dirty, even if it doesn't matter. It's how I am. It's why I could never become a flat rate tech. The other thing we're going to do, and most important thing we're going to do, is we're going to use the hose to flush the heater core and the front radiators via the hoses that are left in the back. I've got everything loosely connected, so in theory I should be able to run hot water, which I do have hot water out here, through the entire cooling system and flush it both directions. It should get most of that stuff out. If I need to, I'll use a little bit of simple green or some sort of detergent to kind of pull all that oily substance from the intermix out, and that way when I go back together, I don't have to flush it over and over and over again, probably just one time. So I've got my hose just loosely placed in this coolant hose, and it should blow whatever's in the cooling system out of this side. Now, if you see the kitty litter bucket, that's to catch the power steering. When I had to turn this thing to get it back into its spot here, I didn't want to lose any fluid on my driveway, so I kind of just rigged that up to catch anything that would come out. So now we're going to go turn the hot water on and see what happens. I might need to put a coupler on this. It'll probably take a minute for it to come out the other side. I think with the back of this car face down, that's going to be a problem. I also need to climb under there and get a hold of the heater hoses. I'll probably do that tomorrow. All right, now I've got it rigged up where the hose is clamped into this hose, and then I have some stuff I found in my garage. We're going to try to flush it the other direction, and hopefully this all stays together enough that I can force coolant through the other side. I hope. We're going to find out right now. Oh, we're leaking. But look at that. Got to get all that green stuff out. It's crude, but it's working. All right, as you can see, it's starting to get a little less green. That means there's more water content. Got to get all that green stuff out. Now it's getting really clear. There's hardly any hints of green. And of course, I'm going to have to do it the other direction, and then I'll have to do that with the heater core, which I'll probably do that tomorrow. All right, now I've got it hooked up backwards. Let's go turn on the hot water. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, chunky stuff. There's chunks of intermix just coming out of there. The water's clear, but oh, there we go. There's some more coolant. It's this kink here that's causing the problem here. Oh no, now I got a problem here. So as you can see, there's still a lot of intermix, a lot of junk that I need to get out of the cooling system. So we're gonna run some detergent, probably some Simple Green. And what I'll likely do is I'll fill this with some Simple Green and I'll let it sit. And I'll try to find some way of cycling that through the entire system and then draining it. But I gotta get that out. There's no, I can't just let it be. Next, we're gonna peel the intake manifold off, figure out what happened with this intake gasket. I don't know why it's hanging out. Is it an old reused gasket or is it a new gasket that got pinched during reassembly? Either way, these things are only $6 a piece. So we're gonna replace them all. Even though this side might be the only side with a leak, I'm already here. I'm gonna do everything I can. Most things I can. First, we'll start removing some of these clamps on these couplers here. Now we'll remove these bolts. Okay. Well, we kind of have our answer here. It's still soft and pliable. What happened to this gasket? It's butchered. You think this was over torqued? It was in the right spot. I think it just got pinched during reinstallation. And the way those were stuck in there, I don't think these things were replaced. They should just fall out. This car wasn't together that long. I think only 300 miles maybe. So yeah, we're going to replace these, put this back on. We'll get the other side done. But I'm going to do one other thing before the end of this video. We're going to see what the plugs look like. You know, teardown style. Now we get to remove these Toyota bolts I put in here. And then we'll see what the plugs look like. Well, that's dry, so that's good. Now let's get this plug out. Well, they weren't tight. It's good. Brand new Bosch R5s. FGR 6KQE. Germany. According to the powers of the internet, these are the correct spark plugs, which is good. So we're going to get this back in, and then I'm going to check the torque on some of the others. Make sure they're all at 22 foot-pounds. Let's see how far this one's off. I haven't pulled this plug out yet. Okay, so they were a little loose. I find this more often than not. I'd much rather them be loose than tight. Tight is bad. Tight means I have to do a lot of work to get them back out if something's wrong. I still have a long, long way to go, but we did make some progress. There were no terrible surprises here. This is all really easy to sort. Tightening up the spark plugs, installing new intake gaskets, and snapping some things back into where they go. Nothing too bad there. There's still a lot of work, and I'm waiting on parts. My IMS bearing still hasn't shown up yet. It's been a week and a half, and that sucker better be here soon. I still have to clean all of the parts I pulled out, including the transmission and all of the braces. I like to clean everything before it goes back in. And then I have to power wash the engine compartment of that car and find a way to get the intermix out of the cooling system and the heater core. And I have a few ideas. All of that will be in the next video, which will hopefully be within the next week, week and a half. I need to get this project done, and this car better drive by June 5th. It better, but it might not. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next update.